Through the Leadership Lens is brought to you by Thompson Autogas. Thompson Autogas is the industry's gold standard turnkey solution for all your autogas needs. From funding to refueling and everything in between, Thompson Autogas is there to support your fleet every step of the way.
Hello and welcome to another Through the Leadership Lens, a podcast presented by the Women in Propane Council. I am Freddie Riddler.
And I'm Bridget Kidd, and together we're your hosts. And today we are so excited to have a very special guest to the propane industry, Tamria Zertuche, the CEO of Ferrellgas. So welcome, Tamria. We are so excited you were able to make the time. I know you're very busy to meet with us. I think we all have a shared passion in leadership and organizational structure and what that means. So to kick off our conversation, will you tell us a little bit about what you do in your role, and then what does leadership mean to you?
Oh, those are two amazing questions because I get to speak about my teams and the people of Ferrellgas in the first one. That's what I get to do each day is work with the amazing people that are part of the Ferrellgas family. And we are a logistics company that happens to be experts in the safe handling of propane. And a very wonderful career over 19 years with Ferrellgas. And I've had a lot of opportunities, the opportunity to raise my family while also, moving forward in my career, the opportunity to make lifelong colleagues that have helped me be a better person, and to work with just wonderful teams of people who care about customers. Leadership is a really big word, and it's one of my absolute favorite topics. And I especially like to speak about good leadership, right, is at the heart of a great family, community, organization, or business. And when I think about leadership, I think about the fact that we all have capacity to be leaders. And it's really the choice to use that capacity and to do that. And leaders they create trust, and leaders bring really clear vision, like clarity to the goal or the mission. And we all have the capacity to do those two things. So that's leadership, sort of concise nutshell for me.
So Tamria, I was listening to a podcast just this other week and about leadership, and a question came up that I emailed Bridget and our executive producer Jessica about. I'm going to add a new question to this podcast. And the question was, when did you become a leader? Because not all of us are born into leadership, but there's a time in your career, your life, where you're like, wow, I've been given the opportunity to become a leader. When did that happen in your career or your life?
Well, I think everyone practices to be a great leader. I don't know that there's a line in the sand because we always have to practice. Leadership is something you have to keep trying at. But if I think about the four things that I think a leader needs to have, the clear vision, high trust, they are a teacher or a coach, and they have to believe in people. Leaders really believe in people because leadership is also teamwork. They coexist. So if I look in my career at a time when I could see those four things happening, it was probably, around the time that I moved into sort of a middle management type role. And I had people who really depended on me. My family, my children were growing, so they were depending on me. And I was at this sort of crossroads of family, work, community responsibilities. And I saw people maybe stop and listen to what I had to say and maybe cared and were curious about what I had to say. But it's really those four things that I like in leadership. So if I can see those things in myself, I think, okay, the practice is helping, it's working.
I like that you've kind of categorized the four pillars of what you think leadership are. Can you look back in either your professional life or personal life to see somebody who really modeled those, and that, or maybe even a couple people that you drew those pillars, for lack of a better word, from?
Oh, yeah, I love that. I love that we get to speak about the great leaders that I've had in my life. I've been blessed to have many from the time I was a child, starting with my mother to, present day. Maybe I'll start with present day. So I just succeeded into the position of chief, executive officer for Ferrellgas. And I'm replacing Jim Farrell, who has been in this industry and been a leader for a very long time. And I really believed in people. I appreciated people. But Jim taught me how to seek to understand people.
Mm.
And I really think that that's an important part for a leader is we can appreciate, we can, but to understand and be curious in a really deep way with people, that is so important. And leaders who care, who really appreciate people, they normally have high expectations of people because they do understand, and then they can help you push yourself to that high standard or that high expectation. I have many stories of great leaders, but I'll stop there since the podcast will be concise.
Feel free to share more. I mean, that's what it's all about. This
Right.
this podcast is for our listeners and viewers to kind of just, listen to your story. And that's what it's all about. Like what truly makes you that leader in the industry. And you said something, something very interesting to me. You said a lot of people say surround yourself by people that are positive in life, and positivity only gets you so far. But you said as leadership, you said surround yourself by people who have high expectations of you. I like that. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because that caught my ear of I expect so much more from you, but that's okay because that's saying you are a leader. I do trust you, and I want you to stand in front of other people. I want you to be that next pillar. Can you talk more about those high expectations of leadership responsibility?
Well, gosh, I really liked how you framed all that up. But I'll try to build on that a little bit in that, high trust, to create a high trust environment, you have to have real dialogue. You have to feel that you can say the things that need to be said to make whatever it is better. Myself as a person, this process, the company. And if you don't have that direct dialogue, then you really you can't set those expectations because you don't really know what's the art of the possible unless you really get into those deep discussions. And that means that you have to, so I think out loud, and I think that that's something that has caught some traction in sort of mainstream media. They categorize people who think out loud. And then if you're taken literally and you're a leader and you think out loud, all of a sudden the whole organization has pivoted to this thing that you've. So I've had to learn to say, I'm speaking plainly. I'm actually just thinking out loud. Let's walk all the way down this path. I'm not saying this is what we're going to do, but let's all walk down this path, this thing that's a lot of change, it's complex. Let's walk down this path together and try it out and see what it feels like. And then we may not do that. And then we may walk down this other path. And then as you're doing that, you learn what's the expectations you can have of yourself and other people through that really, just honest candor.
So I have so many questions about that because I think this is a really significant point in organizational structure too, and being really aware of your role in that conversation. So I've had some experiences. I'm pretty familiar. I don't know if you use like the Gallup and Strengths Finders and all of that. So when someone like me is more of an executor, right? But I work with a lot of ideators, and so depending on your role in an organization, you have to be so aware that if you're the CEO and you're ideating, other people are taking that as direction. So how do you mitigate that? I mean, it sounds like you are a fan of pretty direct conversation and feedback. But does that ever present a challenge?
Oh, certainly. My dissertation topic is on scenario planning, and we could have an entire podcast on scenario planning. So I won't go into deep discussion, but it's about understanding that everything has multiple possible futures. That if you
Mhm.
simply have a plan that gets you from point A to point B, as soon as you start off on your journey, you better have a backup plan, right? So many times I can use that as the platform. Like, listen, let's go through some scenario planning exercises on this. We're going to think through plan A, plan B, plan C. We're going to make investments in all of these plans because we want to be able to have, that backup plan to that backup plan. Or sometimes, just like I said, I'll say, let's just think out loud for a minute. And, we're going to say things that we're not going to actually execute on. So let's just agree on that we won't execute on it until we've stacked hands on what the it is. But you're right. We have to be, as leaders and role models, or however you categorize that, we have to be thoughtful about what we say and in the context we say it.
I'm sorry, do you got something to say, Bridget? Do you have another question? Because I know you said you had tons of questions, so I don't want to interrupt you because I want to let you continue on that one.
Well, I just think one of the questions that I would have as a follow-up to that is, how do you help those around you be aware of their role in that scenario planning, right? Because everybody has a really critical role, whatever from their perspective. Is there a process that you use, or kind of some boundaries that you establish?
So there's kind of a functional answer to your question, and then there's sort of the more macro. So at a macro level, it is extremely important for everyone that's a part of a team or a discussion to understand what they're bringing to that team or to that discussion, and having a good talk or a template around that before you come together is very, very important. So the functional part of that is meetings at Ferrellgas have a guard, right? We set a goal, there's an agenda, there's roles, and there's a deliverable or, an outcome from it. So you go into the meeting understanding, oh, my role is to listen and be informed, or my role is I'm a decision maker. So I probably have some pre-preparation that I need to have done before I show up because I will be asked to make a decision. That's the functional side of how you can maybe create a checklist for all of that. But at the high level, it's you know what a RACI model is. So responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed. That's a big part of a highly working team. And we're talking about teams. Why? Because it's so ingrained with leadership.
Well, I think that's such a nice piece of advice, I would say, for people maybe who are listening to this podcast who are moving into a leadership role. That's a really critical takeaway, I think, to say, make sure you establish meetings or project teams or, any whatever your working group structure is with those core components, because it allows your leadership to thrive in other ways. You're not worrying about the maintenance of the meeting or the
Exactly.
expectations of the meeting.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a really good point to make and say again is direction for meetings. So we've had other people in podcasts say the same thing. You're talking about scenarios. I'm going to give you a scenario, and I want you to tell me. And I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I wrote it down to think out loud. I'm that type of person. I just love to say or out loud. I like to when I go to a meeting or if I have something to talk about, I say it out loud because then I can hear myself and others. How would you tell the listener or viewer to this podcast, through the Leadership Lens podcast, that they have things to say, but they're afraid to think out loud? What advice would you give to them so they can actually be that voice in that meeting or in a project? Because, there's a lot of people out there that are really great leaders, but they just need that breaking point to come out of their shell. So, you're talking about scenarios. What would you give advice to that listener or viewer to this podcast?
So I think it's a great question. And I started before I had an opportunity to be a leader in my work setting, which was tied to my livelihood. When I go to work, it was important because it was necessary to support my family. And so practicing new skill sets on something so important as your livelihood, that's stressful and can be overwhelming. So I tell people to start in their community, whatever, maybe it's their school community, maybe it's your church community. Take a leadership role there first if you think you want to be a leader, because it's easier to practice there. There's less, tied to that. And then when you develop that skill sets and you see people following you, now you can use those skill sets in this thing that's so important and it's tied to your livelihood. So that's one of the first pieces of, advice that I give to people as they think about becoming leaders.
That's great. Can you talk a little bit about the ways you are involved in your community? I mean, is that, I'm sure your time is limited, but are you still engaged in that way?
Definitely. I mean, I love communities. I love to be a part of the community. I'm a social creature. So, for a long time, my children are grown, but for a long time, my community and how I was involved was tied directly to them. So, different types of leadership at their schools or in their sports and all of that. And what I would say is that the community involvement I do today is more social purpose community involvement. I do try to mentor. I try to be a part of making the academic world, sort of understand what's going on in the business world, try to help students who may not have had parents that have gone to college. I was a first generation college person, so I know what that journey was like. So that's really where my involvement is today.
Yeah,
That's
I
great.
agree. And we talk a lot on the podcast about the role, especially with so many women, not that dads don't have the same experience ready, but that the challenge, right? And whether it's internal pressure or social pressure or whatever, whoever you want to allocate it to, you want to keep a foot in, or at least I do, in my kids' community as they're little. So I want to be so involved there while you're also working on your own career advancement and personal development and those sorts of things. And I agree that there's a little bit of a lower risk in some community involvement. Um, but flexing those muscles is so important. So,
Mhm.
are there professional development activities that outside of getting your doctorate and pursuing academic exercises that you participate in?
So I am a part of the National Propane Gas Association. I'm on the executive board for that. Also on the World LP Gas Association board. So those I would say take up most of my time right now. And I'm new to my position. I'm 8 weeks into being the CEO of the second largest propane company. I'm very focused right now on what does that mean, and learning and from my team, like what do they want and need from me, and continuing to have a lifeline to Jim Farrell and as he's watching how I'm executing it. So I'm very focused on that right now, and I'm hoping that as I get better at all of this, I will broaden that and maybe move into board activity or help other companies that
Hmm.
are looking for leadership advice.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, that's when you say it, I'm the CEO of the second largest propane company. That's huge. That's a lot more powerful than just how it comes out. That's a really huge achievement. It's really exciting to have you on this podcast to hear that come from you. And to go back to what Bridget said, just a quick funny thing. My family and I, we do 365 connecting questions. So every single day we ask our family a question, and it just came up yesterday. Who do you feel more open to talk to, mom or dad? And it was pretty unanimous. It was mom. So I get it. I get your comment. So,
We all have our strengths, Freddie. We all have our
I know. So let's talk about changing in leadership. And I don't bring up the COVID, not just because of the year that the world shut down, but the way technology has changed. Prior to 2020, we could be in person with people. You could see their reactions. You could talk to them in person. And then the world kind of changed a little bit where we said we can use technology. And we're all using technology because this podcast is a great, useful
Mhm.
tool to this technology. Do you see leadership roles change? I know you're only 8 months into it, but prior to the 2020 era, have you seen leadership roles change a little bit because of what happened?
I think at the macro level, yes, I do believe leadership has changed kind of post pandemic. And I think technology is an influence on that. But I also think balance in our life and personal well being has taken a front seat. And so that changes leadership because in order to help somebody understand how to have balance or personal well being, you have to truly understand the person. It can't just be they walk by your cube and you might say, hey, Now really to help them, you have to understand like, what are the challenges they're facing. And it could be simple as their work desk setup, right? To what are the things that are going on in the workspace, to just external factors that impact all of us, increasing interest rates or whatever. But it's you seek to understand, ask questions. And I do think that leadership today, especially over technology, you have to ask more questions and you have to seek to understand in a little different way. And everyone has a different style for that. I wouldn't even try to suggest a style because I think you have to find your own.
Mm-hmm. The question just keeps coming into my head. And I don't know if I'm reading this properly or not, but I feel like you bring a significant degree of humility into your role and your role as a leader, and also maybe a little bit of vulnerability. Do you think that, and transparency, that I'm 8 weeks in, I'm learning this, I'm looking for the best ways to advance our team and our organization? What's your thoughts on that? Do you feel like those are critical components to leadership?
Absolutely. I have the wonderful gift of being able to speak in this manner because of what I do in academia and in other ways. And when I'm speaking about a topic of leadership from an academic perspective, I have the sense of ease. But being here as a representative of Ferrellgas, I was so nervous coming into this podcast because I'm having to represent these people who I care so much about, and I'm representing them, and it's a heavy weight that I enjoy, but I was nervous and vulnerability. I have no problem saying that I'm nervous to represent them because I want to do a good job for them. And I think being vulnerable, I hope it helps other people understand that failure is okay, practicing is okay, continuous improvement is based on the fact that there was something that didn't go right the first time. And I believe in all of those things. I couldn't say that I believe in them and that then not show up on this podcast and say, I'm really nervous to be here as the representative for my company. I want to do a great job for them.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely.
I mean, and I think from my perspective, to be able to have that humility and vulnerability comes from total confidence in your own abilities, right? But you're not going to be, again, I think it's my perspective that you know you can do the job, you have the academic experience, you have the professional experience, but you're aware enough of that impact and what you represent. And I think it's I think those are two wonderful characteristics for someone to have. And I think leaders are more successful when they can demonstrate both of those rather than being, I'm right, I know everything.
Right. No, I agree with you. Confidence is good because I think you want to be around a confident person that
Mhm,
and but also someone who can question themselves.
mhm,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I'm happy that you appreciate the nervousness that can come from these podcasts because I still do it. Every time I wake up the day before the podcast, I'm always like, "Oh my goodness, am I really the right person for this?" But it's our job is to bring your stories out, and that's the easy part. So as long as as we can hear your stories and we can share them with all of our viewers and listeners, that's what it's all about. I heard you say mentorship previously. Can you talk about mentorship at Ferrellgas since you want to represent the company that you're so proud to work for? Do they have a mentorship program? And the only reason I'm bringing it up is the Women in Propane have a mentorship program, and I'm going to plug it now. The Knowledge Exchange. I like to plug a lot of Women in Propane activities and events and projects that we're working on. But they have a really good mentorship program called the Knowledge Exchange. But I'm assuming you might have some type of internal mentorship program inside of Ferrellgas, being such a large company.
Yes, and we have a few different ways in which it happens. Um, I'm not always one for very prescriptive things where, hey, here's your mentor. I know you never met them before, but they're going to mentor you. We really refer to that more as here's your senior coach because
Okay.
you get assigned to a coach, right? So here's your senior coach, and they've been here and they know the ropes. And oh, by the way, they want to be senior coaches and they really want who they work with to succeed. So that's one path. And I think that way, if it doesn't quite fit, I mean, you can always change teams, right? So you can change senior coaches and you can work through it. Mentorship to me is something that happens organically. Somebody looks out into the universe and says, wow, that person they emulate what it is that I can feel inside that I want to learn from them. So we reach out and we say, could you mentor me? And it can be as formal as that, or it could just be, hey, let's get together and have lunch on a regular basis. And that type of mentorship absolutely exists at Ferrellgas. And I'm really proud of how people feel that they can reach out to their peers, they can reach up, they can reach out, and that's then accepted. And organic mentorship is the strongest kind.
Yeah.
Well said.
I have one other question. What keeps you motivated?
Mm. Like I said, I absolutely love people. I really love people. And when you work for a company, so I started with the Blue Rhino brand. So I've actually been affiliated with the company, if you think about the Blue Rhino brand, for over 22 years. So long time to be with one company. Why? Because of the people. And I mean that genuinely. I literally learn something every day, and I'm motivated by an opportunity to learn. And sometimes it's just someone that says, "Oh, I was reading this article, and did you know that, whales are doing this off the," like, that's amazing, like, and so it's just that motivates me is to talk to people and to learn from them, and then to work arm in arm with them on a goal, and to get something done, and to win.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are we ready to switch into
I
our?
think so. Unless anything, well, I guess before we get into the women of propane or the whip round, any last minute advice you want to give to any viewers or listeners before we kind of switch gears into the fun side of the podcast?
Oh my goodness. Well,
It's a loaded question.
yeah,
I
I
know.
try to never use the word advice, but suggestions would
Any
be,
suggestions?
yeah, suggestion would be to, find what you love and find and do that, right? And I don't think that that's a cliche. I think that is a very serious and something you should ponder type of suggestion, is find what you love and do it. You don't have to do it all day. Even if you just do it for a small part of every day, you should do it.
Yep. The 80-20 theory, right? I think I heard that somewhere. Do what makes you happy 20% of your day, and then 80% of it work. I don't know. It was some podcast I was listening to. It sounded about
Seems like a
my
great
day.
ratio. That's a good ratio.
So I'm gonna let Bridget kick this off. This is our whip round. We just ask some really fun questions, and this is where we really get to know the fun side of you. So I'll kick it over to Bridget.
All right. So my first question would be, if you had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh, this one's a hard one. There's so many, and now today on TV, there's always superpowers. But so in sixth grade, I think I remember answering this question the first time for one of our little yearbook questions, and I believe I said then, and I agree today, that if I could help people not feel pain or suffering, that would be the superpower I'd want.
Mm-hmm.
Different direction than most of our guests. Most want to just fly so they can visit different places of the world, but I like your approach with this one.
Avoid the lines at TSA.
Yeah. So what do you keep in the trunk of your car?
Oh, easy. Extra pair of running shoes. I'm a runner, so have to have my extra pair.
You have
Yep.
them. Good. What about what do you wish you would have known when you were 16 years old that you know now?
Oh my goodness, that's so long ago. You're making me think so long ago. You know, I guess I I probably wanted to be right and perfect and correct too much when I was 16. And I think if someone had just said, it's okay to fail, it's okay to not be that right, correct, or win all the time, I would have liked someone to say that to me more.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, having teenagers, I might take that little section and give it to them. Um, if you were not in the propane industry, what would you be doing right now
Oh, I love
for a
that question.
career?
Um, you know, the propane industry has such a strong social purpose. It is, that's why I think the people who are in this industry are so amazing to work with. Having a job that you go to every day that has a social purpose. So I know for 100% that if I had a different industry, it would also have to have a social purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah. If you wrote a book about your career so far, what would it be titled?
Oh my goodness. Um, it would have to have the word team. So, great teams, make for success or something like that. It would have the word team in it.
Yeah.
Hmm. If you would describe yourself in one word, what would that one word be?
Energy. I don't drink caffeine. I wake up. I'm go, go, go. So energy.
I wish I could live without caffeine. All right, my last question. We focused a lot on work and family. What is your ideal vacation?
This one's easy because honestly, vacation is in your mind. Because how many trips have you been on? Right? Especially as a mother of 3 children, I was on a lot of trips. Vacation is a state of mind, and so anywhere that I am with friends and family, and I've decided this is vacation, it's the ideal vacation.
That is
Perfect.
great.
That's a
And I
great
can
answer.
appreciate the
Mhm.
trip versus vacation. That just hit. Hey, that is not a lot of we just went out west this summer, which we were very fortunate to do, but it was very much a trip, which was
Mhm.
great
Oh,
and
when
enjoyable. But
when they get older, it becomes more vacation. That's where
yeah,
I'm at now. It's a lot of fun. But yeah,
yeah,
I remember the trips we had in the day.
yeah. They're lucky to have them for sure.
Hmm.
Right.
Well, awesome. I don't have any other follow-up questions. Bridget, do you have anything else to add? This was a really great
No, this was
podcast. Thank you for joining
fantastic.
us.
Thank you so much. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
both of you.
much.
Awesome. Thank you. This has been another episode of Through the Leadership Lens presented by Women in Propane. Be sure to subscribe, download, and share with a friend. To learn more about Women in Propane, visit us on Facebook, Instagram, or online at www.womeninpropane.org. I'm Freddie Riddler.
And I'm Bridget Kidd. Thanks for listening. Until next time.